Okay, we are back with Jeff Jones. And Jeff, we were talking a few minutes ago and our system dropped out. So we had to come back in here. And that's the good thing about doing this stuff live. So
Mhm.
I'm going to ask you one more time just to describe what you do so we can make sure everybody hears it because I don't think they did before.
Okay, well, I'm Jeff Jones again, and I've been in the restoration industry for over 55 years. I literally grew up in it, and I've been doing forensic restoration for right at 53 years. Forensic restoration is defined as the comprehensive remediation of microenvironments. That's a term that was first coined by Dr. Michael Berry, a former director with the EPA, in his wonderful book, Protecting the Built Environment. But forensic restoration is the comprehensive remediation of microenvironments that have been contaminated or suspected to be contaminated from biological materials or hazardous materials. So that could come from homicide, suicide, accidental, or a natural death. Any one of those can become an unattended death leading to advanced human decomposition. We know this now, that human decomposition begins approximately 4 minutes after
Mhm.
death, but it could be a synthetic contaminant like tear gas, which is specifically made to be a human irritant.
That's CN, correct?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. There's more than one type of tear gas, but that's predominantly what is used
Yeah.
today. And then we have other synthetics contaminants like fentanyl and
Mhm.
carfentanil, definitely the most dangerous contaminants of our lives right now. And then we're also working on training protocols to respond to, because unfortunately, it's not a if this is going to happen, it's a when is
When?
this going to happen, biological WMDs. But, Microbial Warrior, that's our training program, and Normie actually mirror each other so much because we're both dealing with biological contaminants. And I believe that both really our tactical approach pretty much is the same. We want to contain, control,
Right.
neutralize, and remove the contaminant safely based on science.
Well, like you said, we're very similar. You as an organization go into much more detail on the forensic side. And again, you're talking about crime scene cleanup, which is a
Sure.
whole different sector of the industry. Yes, it's remediation, but not due to a microbial problem. And then when you get into the chemistry side of it, like fentanyl, we're dealing more of a hazmat situation,
Correct.
more so than even lead and asbestos. I mean, this is something that just by touch can enter your system and seriously affect your health. So your training is very specialized with that. I know when I was talking with Lori earlier today, and we talked about some of the teaching that she does. She was talking about using real life situations where your classes, you're using blood to clean up. She had this kind of like smirk on her face when she said animal brains and things like that, because it makes it
That's
real.
my wife.
It makes it realistic.
Well, it has to be. To me, that's not a big deal that we use real biological contaminants.
Mhm.
And now I see that, there's some other trainers going out, and they're saying, we use real blood. I'm like, well, that's not very stimulating to me. That's like saying we've got a water class and we're using real water.
Yeah,
You should train to what you're going to go and engage
absolutely.
in. This is, of course, microbial warfare. And so we want to go out and deal as close to combat situations as we can and make it realistic. Some people think they want to do this, and then they find out really fast they can't even perform under simulated microbial warrior conditions.
Well, I know things like the odor bothers people,
Sure.
and that's something that can make people sick and leave the environment. But I was over by your booth earlier, and you guys somehow talked me into putting a helmet on, which is a breathing apparatus that replaces masks.
Mhm.
With the positive pressure in there, I think that's like eliminating the odor problem, isn't it?
Sure, if you put an OV filter on that, and a lot of people use those. I don't. Okay,
Mm,
I grew up. I You never forget the smell of death.
no.
Okay. But let me be honest. My clients are not going to be wearing one when they walk in at the end of a job. I need to know what this smells like.
Oh,
you know,
understood.
and we do
Understood.
not use deodorizers in any fashion or form. We use no masking agents. If you have an odor, you have a source. What's the general rule? Remove the source, you'll remove the odor.
Correct. And if you're using a masking agent, never mind hiding the odor itself, you're creating more of a VOC or chemical problem in the
Absolutely.
environment.
Absolutely. So we need to think about, not only what are we cleaning and why? What's the source of contaminant? Is it mold? Is it biologicals? Is it blood? Is it human decomposition? What is the contaminant? But also, how are we leaving that? What type of chemicals are we using? And we saw just insanity during COVID.
Yeah,
People were going in and spraying everything under the sun with no forethought of how's that going to affect that surface in the long term.
correct. Correct. And again, if any of you aren't sure about the timeline, that's when the world ran out of toilet paper, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well,
again, panicking, people not knowing what to do, and that's what happens.
well, you know what? I did an interview on COVID on January 3rd, 2020. And at that time, when I did the interview, there were 2.5 cases in the United States. And I had the numbers, it was like, oh, there's 17 in Italy. And
Right.
that's how low it was at that time. So there are 2.5 cases. Two were in a nursing home in Washington State, and the 0.5 was in Chicago because they had not been declared positive yet.
Right.
So a couple weeks later, we got a call for a very large scale unattended death in a 2-story condo, and everything had to be emptied out, everything had to be deconned, everything had to be cleaned. Everything had to be disinfected, everything had to be tested, and it took us 3.5 days to do that. There was a lot of contents, and it was really bad. At the end of it, because this was just inside of Texas, we drove back at the end of the day, and I walked into the kitchen. I said, "Oh, I need to go get some creamer because I want some coffee in the morning." And I hadn't been to a store and
Yeah.
during the duration. I walked into the store and I was like, what happened? Well, because I was focused on my job.
Yeah.
Like all the toilet paper was gone, all the soup was gone. I was like,
Yeah.
what happened? People just lost their minds.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you ever saw it. It's a short video that they play online every once in a while about the got to get the bread and milk.
Yes.
Guy running around panicking because it's going to snow.
Yeah,
It's the same thing. I gotta get the bread and milk, and just pure panic. And a lot of that was hyped with the media.
of
We knew
course.
that was a problem. But COVID, like a lot of other things, was a serious situation. Have you ever dealt with things where you had to wear, I guess it's called a level 4 suit, where you're basically built into the suit?
We are at level 3 when we're working
Okay.
on that. Okay. If I were to put on that level of protection, SCBAs and stuff, that means I'm working on a full blown something like a fentanyl distribution center.
Right.
And so, we have 3 levels of contaminants when we're dealing with 3 threat levels when we're dealing with the remediation of fentanyl. Definitely the most dangerous contaminant of our lives. Oh, but don't worry, they'll come up with something new.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just the thought process of creating more things like that.
Sure.
If they could turn that into positive, imagine how far advanced we would be.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Unfortunately, and this is the real world. There are bad people that don't want us on this planet simply because this is where we
I
grew
keep
up.
telling people that, and they don't believe me. No, you're absolutely right. And the seriousness of it is we need to be trained to deal with this stuff. We need to be aware of it because just throwing out garbage and touching stuff that had fentanyl on it is enough that could kill you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it all comes down to, on a professional level, training, tactics, techniques, and tools. And notice I said it in that order: training,
Right.
tactics, techniques, and tools. Too many times, people in the restoration industry get wrapped up in the newest sprayer, the newest this gadget and everything. And that's not where it's at. You've got to have a protocol.
Yes.
You want to be able to contain, control, neutralize, and remove that contaminant, and ask yourself, what are we cleaning and why?
Why was the word I was going for? Because you can buy the tools. Why'd you buy that? You know,
Yeah.
well, I'm going to go take care of this. Are you trained to? Well, we'll figure it out. You can't figure this out.
And
This is too
yeah.
dangerous.
This is the one part of the industry, whether it's mold or whether it's some of the dangerous contaminants I work with. Here's the word you do not want to hear. Oops.
Yeah. Yeah, we joked about that when I was on the police department with the guys from the bomb squad, and they used to have sayings in the back of their shirts. If you see me running, try to keep up. You
But
don't want that.
we talk about, training tactics, techniques, and tools, and we talk about our end. But, I think one of the things that we always need to stay focused on, no one calls you, no one calls me because they're having a good day.
Yeah.
And so what we also need to keep in mind, but our prime directive of safety, but that client, that has potentially dangerous mold and contaminants in their house, or in my end, that client that may have lost a loved one. Okay. If we handle these people with care, compassion, and concern, and base all of this on science and conduct ourselves with honor and integrity, there's no way you cannot succeed.
Agreed. Have you ever come across any radioactive situations?
No, I have not.
It's a very strange feeling because I've come across the scenes that would qualify as a crime scene cleanup and stuff like that from my previous life, and I came across one situation with radiation,
Really?
and there's a definite change in the way that you feel because it's such an unknown to the general public, and I'm considering myself general public in this because I am not trained in that level of a response. With the police department, we responded to a burglar alarm. As we went into the building, we hit a door that said, "Do not go beyond this point, radiation." The guys that I was with, they started backing out, had me there as a supervisor. Turned out it was a storage place for ground sensing equipment.
Okay.
And they use radiation to do that. Well, it was safe, very small chips, and they have to mark the building. But it was an extremely unsettling feeling being there and knowing what to do. We backed out,
Right.
because we're not trained in that type of response.
Right. And you know what? That's one thing that, like, especially new remediators, whether it is mold or whether it is on the forensic end and stuff, need to realize their limitations and need to know when to pull back and call and ask for some expert consultation and help.
That's something that actually needs to be taught because people don't realize it. People are, in general, pleasers. They want to have the answer. If they don't have it, they try to make it up. And in our line of work, that can be very, very dangerous.
Absolutely. Remember the Clint Eastwood movie, Magnum Force?
Yes.
The line he used in that, man's got to know his limitations.
It's absolutely correct.
Absolutely correct.
I've seen it from the emergency services side. You've seen it. You were in the military. People do things that, beer muscles, if you want to call it, here, hold my beer. I'm going in, that's where you get hurt. And if you're doing a job and you need to climb up and reach something, you don't have a ladder, you don't stack 4 chairs on top of each other and try to climb it. But people do. And then you laugh about it afterwards. And could you believe what this guy did? Could have seriously gotten hurt. The same problem with these microbes and chemistries and all the biohazards we come in contact with, not wearing the right equipment is the same thing as standing on 4 chairs piled high.
Absolutely. Have people died cleaning up after fentanyl? Yes, they have.
Yes.
Okay. And so we need to be aware of that.
Yeah. And it's not just coming in contact with a lab. Our remediators, our assessors, you're going into homes, into businesses that it's an unknown. You don't know what's there. Should you be wearing gloves? Absolutely. PPE? Yes, you really need it, even in a normal looking environment, because what is normal? You never
If it was
know.
normal, you wouldn't be there.
Exactly. They've called for a reason.
We're biological SWAT teams. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I haven't looked at it like that, but yeah, I guess it would fit. But that's this industry. And as we look around, there's people all over here from all over the country. Actually, there's a lot of people here from Australia and the UK. They come to this show because they get to see people in the industry, their peers, how they work, how they do things, the training available. They meet people like you with the technology and the upper level training that you do, that even with our most advanced training, we don't cover crime scene and cleanup. So this is the place to be in a show like this,
Oh,
just to meet
I love
people.
being around my peers and colleagues here because I pick up things left and right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's, a good experience. And I'm glad you were here and had time to
Thank
talk
you
with us.
so much.
It's always a pleasure.
Thanks,
I
Lance.
told Lori I'd really like to get into one of your classes one day.
Oh, we'd love to have you
I think it would be of a big interest and value for me. So,
anytime. The
all right,
door's open.
we'll hold you to that.
Okay.
All righty. Take care. Thank you.